Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CounterPick, New Perspectives. My name is Samuel Ray, known to many as Dr. Sam, and I'm here with my co-host,
Samson, aka Prime.
So this is the next episode of Season 2. I believe this is Episode 2 proper, because we did an Episode 0, then last month was Episode 1.
We did Episode 0?
That was our, reintroduction episode. Yeah, I consider that Episode 0.
I forgot we did that. Anyway.
Yeah, so we're back making this a monthly thing. So 2 months in a row, because we're going to try to keep it rolling. We'll just sit down and talk about a topic that's related, tangentially or very directly to the gaming and entertainment space. Sometimes we go off on tangents into movies and pop culture as well, but generally keep it around video games, just so we have a topical kind of center, a core there. Today's topic is going to be on tradition and evolution, namely when is change in a game, like say a long-running game series, too much or too little, or how much should older genres and games adapt to the changing industry? Because to be fair, while a lot of people do make games out as a passion project, unless it makes money, they can't make any more content for that game, and they can't make any more games. It's still a business, it's not a charity.
Yeah.
So they have to make money, and to do that, they do have to adapt to an extent to the gaming landscape as it is now, not as it was a decade or two ago.
Yeah, supply and demand. Basic business.
Yeah. Those who want games that are like back in the days, that's generally a niche. So the older game genres and series that have been around for a long time generally have to go through some form of changes, or you would think. And that's kind of where we're going to jump into it, because off the rip, we think of two different series that we have spoken of before, so we're just going to retread lightly in this one, but that
real quick
are very similar, as in that they used to be rivals and they are on the same genre, but they also couldn't be more different.
Yeah. So I'm picking up what you're putting down. We're talking about the old style console war, symbols, icons. Yeah. Sonic and Mario.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, just let me get through this real quick. Mario, we all know this. Games are the same, basically, except for a few standouts like Super Mario Sunshine, I guess you could say Galaxy. The spin-offs don't really count in this case. They're different genres.
So mainline series.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a platformer, you're jumping, you're hitting blocks, you're jumping on Koopas and Goombas. It's the same thing. You have some different stages. Sometimes you throw in a new power-up for okay, this is a new thing, but it's the same thing at its core.
Yeah, there's usually one gimmick, one small gimmick.
Yeah.
And it bounces back and forth between dimensions, 2D and 3D.
Yeah, and then you've got New Super Mario Bros. on the DS or whatever. You have the Mega Mushroom where you just stomp through everything.
Yeah.
Some of the games will introduce World, introduce the Cape, and other stuff like that. The propeller.
But the core of the game series is pretty much the same.
Yeah, power-ups shake things up a little bit for the level design, but in general, the core of the mechanics are the same.
For more than 3 decades.
Yeah. And the stability works for it. Mario has had probably the most video games that any video game character has. And Mario sells. It's familiar. It's you go back to it because you know what Mario is going to be. Sonic, on the other hand, was born out of being based on the character and not on the gameplay. And we've already talked about this. Mario's design literally came from what would work best in that 8-bit style to show he actually has a face.
Limited
body is different.
Right? And limited color palettes too that could be visible on screen at one time.
Yeah, but Sonic started based on the character and the loose idea that came from speedrunning Mario 1-1. They built from there, but a bunch of different Sonic games have shaken things up over the years, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
like 1 through 3 in Knuckles are kind of the same thing, just on a line of evolution. But then you go to, well, you have, first of all, Sonic 3D Blast. Very different.
Isometric 3D, yeah.
Sonic CD is also kind of with the 1, 2, 3 Knuckles.
Well, so Sonic CD and Sonic 2 were made at the same time,
Yeah.
but by different studios.
Yeah.
Sonic CD was made by the Japanese studio who made Sonic 1. Sonic 2 was made by an American studio that they put their spin on evolving Sonic 1, and that ended up becoming the foundation for the rest of the 2D games.
Yeah, but like the Sonic CD's gameplay is basically the same as the other ones. It's just the main difference is it has the one gimmick of the time travel, and the difference in level design.
And the super heal out mechanic. Yeah.
Yeah, which is not that different from the spin dash.
Yeah, except you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable but faster, which in some ways made it worse.
Yeah. But
especially with the level design.
but then you have Sonic 3D Blast, isometric 3D, a lot slower, difficult depth perception.
Oh yeah, no, jumping on enemies was clunky, and that's why they made the gold shield power up, which was the first homing attack.
Actually, the main differences in the original run of Sonic games was between the different special stage maps.
Yes, because it was different in every game.
Yeah, like you have the spinning stage with the bung, bung,
Sonic 1, I hated that one.
You have the half pipe. You have the blue spheres.
Also loved that one.
I don't know what it is in Sonic CD off the top of my head.
It was the 3D from behind, like it was the one where you sprite scaling to simulate 3D, and you're running, you have to jump through the UFOs.
Oh,
destroy all the UFOs.
Yeah, okay.
Before
Well,
you run out of
they
enemies.
kind of iterated on for Sonic Mania.
Oh yeah, but Sonic Mania was so much better. It was catch up to the UFO, not destroy all UFOs, and it was.
Well, Sonic
felt
Mania
more-
had blue spheres and catch up to the UFOs.
Yeah, but the Chaos Emeralds was the UFOs ones only.
Yeah. But so then what other Sonic games are? Because then you go to. We're not counting Spinball because that's a spin-off.
Well, in the platformers, that's it for the old ones. You have Knuckles Chaotix, which is a drastic departure with the
kind of a spin-off,
the
but
rubber band like effects. Tethering the two characters together. It was very odd. It's still a platformer though, and it has like pretty much everyone in it except for Sonic and Tails and Amy, because like Metal Sonic even shows up.
But then you go to Sonic Adventure, and I guess it's as much a departure from classic Sonic as Mario 64 was from classic Mario.
Yeah.
So that's not too different, but then you have all sorts of stuff like Sonic Heroes. Oh, you're playing 3 characters that you could switch between formations. Sonic in the Black Knight, suddenly it's a on-rails runner and you have a sword. Well, I think before that it came Sonic and the Secret Rings. Which was also on rails, but it had its own, power-ups and abilities.
RPG system.
Flame and the ring. Sonic games like Shadow the Hedgehog, which was basically Sonic Heroes style gameplay, but you have the one character and then you have instant swords and stuff.
Sonic 2006, which was essentially like a Sonic Adventure 3 in gameplay.
It's not, but okay.
Well, no, core gameplay was kind of like it is so buggy.
I don't acknowledge.
But then you get into the Boost games, starting with actually Sonic Rush on the DS. 2D with Boost. It was the first Sonic game with Boost. Then that transitioned into Unleashed, which is when the 3D Boost formula really took roots.
Yeah, but like there have been a bunch of different changes to the core of the gameplay. I mean, the 3D. The Boost games actually basically took away your ability to spin dash.
Yeah, you only spun if you were like in some of the games if you were boosting while hitting a speed pad, but they would go into a spin.
That was barely mechanically. It was just a visual flair.
Yeah.
So like that's crazy if you think about it, right? Because the spin dash was iconic ever since Sonic 2.
Yeah, I was actually watching a video about it the other day, and they pointed out how the boost essentially invalidates the spin dash, because why would you want to stop moving, charge up the spin dash, and then launch yourself, and then slow down the momentum unless you're going down, decline.
When in a lot of the games, the boost can just
One
crash
button.
through enemies.
Yeah, or one button max speed, right? Even in Sonic Frontiers, when you don't get the invincibility or the ability to attack, boost through enemies, it still is how you hit your top running speed.
So the thing about the Sonic changing so much, though, is I think it has at different times helped and hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard to gauge your opinion on the different Sonic games because there's so many different opinions on.
So the main downside is that you now have a state where you have a fan base for a game series, and no matter what you do in the newest one, you're not going to be able to please the entire fan base. You're going to please people who like the gameplay style you make, but then you're going to have people who wish it was one of the previous gameplay styles, right? People who pine for an Adventure 3, people who want, more classic, like in Sonic Mania, Then you have people like us, who we like it all. Yeah, so we're going to be fine no matter what, but heck, we even enjoyed the Secret Rings and Black Knight for what they were.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was like, 8?
So I enjoyed them for what they were. They were fun. You just had to not have preconceived notions on what you want. At least that's the approach I take. It's like, I'm not going to be like, I hope this is this, and if it's not, I'm going to be upset.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure how much my opinions as like a single digits child are valid in some of these situations. Like, I enjoyed the Werehog stages in Nintendo Wii Sonic Unleashed back then.
I mean, there are people, I've seen videos from people who actually legitimately like the Werehog.
Yeah, but like, objectively, they're kind of just overly long and repetitive combat. But as a small child, I actually enjoyed it, and for some reason had so much longer attention span, conversely to what you would think of children's.
Because you had more free time too.
Yeah, that too. But what you said reminded me, when you're talking about different portions of the fan base that want different things, right? Perfect example. Smash Brothers. Mainly
versus everything
and the rest of it.
Yeah. True. That is very true. Because you have the Melee fans who. I mean, but that's a very interesting case, though.
Because Melee was obviously it was an evolution of the original Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
They were still dialing it in, kind of like how many games
still figuring
sort of didn't get it completely right on the first one, even though it got very popular, like Mega Man. Mega Man didn't have the charge, it didn't have the slide. It had the weird things like there's only 6 Robot Masters and then the rest of them is 8.
Yeah.
Sonic.
Well, that's why many consider the best Mega Man either Mega Man 2 or 4.
Yeah.
And because 2 was the one that refined the first game's formula.
Yeah.
And then 4 was the one that it had introduced 3 introduced the slide, and then 4 introduced the charge shot. And so it felt, to some, like myself, it feels like the most complete of the classic Mega Man.
And Sonic, obviously, we know that the first game didn't have the spin dash
and the level design.
The level design Green Hill.
I'll mention that briefly because we've talked about that in personal discussion, but not in the podcast. I saw it broken down that Sonic 1 had some real big flaws in level design. It set the foundation, but you play Green Hill Zone, right? And the better you get at it, the better, the more paths open up to you. Generally, you end up taking the higher paths, which are faster and more rewarding. And you have to know how to leverage the game's momentum and physics system in order to get to those higher paths efficiently. The more efficient you get at it, the faster you get through the stage too, right? Because it was born from speedrunning Super Mario Brothers Stage 1-1 was the core concept of Sonic Hedgehog. So it's a game that gets better, and more rewarding the better you get at it intrinsically, just through playing it. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you get to the second stage, Marble Garden, right? Not Marble Garden. That was Sonic 3. Mm-hmm. Marble Zone. Yeah, it was much more simple back then. Marble Zone. With the lava. Lava was the second stage. It's like, excuse?
Fun. Wait, I thought the second stage was always a water.
In Sonic 1, it was lava. There's Marble Zone, there's the ruins and lava. And you go down into the caverns underneath. And you have to deal with like standing on these blocks, slowly floating all on the lava and stuff. That whole concept of going faster and getting better paths, the better you get, comes to a screeching halt as soon as you finish Green Hill Zone, because in like Marble Zone, there's only like one shortcut you can find through a small portion of the stage, but the rest of it is kind of just waiting on those blocks while they float and waiting for spikes to come up and down, poke out of the ground and drop, and waiting on those big giant like platforms with spikes on the underside.
There was a lot of waiting.
Yeah,
and then they refined the level design from Green Hill from Sonic 1 in later games.
And you don't even get that feel of the better you get, the faster you get to go until you get to Starlight Zone, and even then it's still kind of
but so back to Melee, right? They were polishing Smash Bros. Because the first game didn't quite have a lot of the things that became intrinsic to it. A number of things.
They only had 3
special attacks,
instead of 4. So Melee kind of refined what the first did,
but it also things ended up coming into it that weren't quite what Sakurai's vision was. And this is something that has been talked about a lot. Like, wave dashing isn't really a glitch; it's an exploit. But Sakurai figured, like, this won't matter too much.
And because remember, they had to turn that game out in like less than 2 years. So he's like, they discovered it in playtesting, but he's like, it probably won't affect much, and we need to use what little time we have in other aspects of designing the game, of developing the game. So they just left it, and then it turned out to become, once the series went on past Melee into Brawl and whatnot, the people who are still playing Melee, if you try to play Melee with those people and you don't know how to wave dash, you're at such a severe disadvantage that it just feels less fun. And like, it creates an artificial skill gap.
And like, not saying it's not legitimate for them to be playing Melee like this or whatnot. It's just not what Sakurai was going for, because we know the story. Sakurai was like playing King of Fighters in an arcade one day, ended up crushing somebody so bad that they said they'd never play the game again. So he thought, I should make a fighting game that is easier for everybody to play. Melee became not that, so he went on in a different direction.
Melee became exactly what he was creating Smash Bros. To not be. He was creating Smash Bros. To be the opposite of what Melee became.
So Brawl went a different direction and
overcorrected,
and then evolved later on into Wii U, 3DS, and Ultimate,
which found a nice balance,
which basically created the 2 camps of Melee and modern Smash.
Pretty much. And so now you have a whole subset of people that if it's not Melee, it might as well not exist for them, or some, not all, but some actively will try to antagonize those who like a modern Smash and constantly want new Smash. But we also know
there's always those people in it.
But the sad thing is, if they were to port Melee to like, say, Switch, and it wasn't the exact same game, like no alterations to anything, including input latency, they won't like it. They'll forego it. Like, I was listening to a podcast regarding like
a lot of them probably would be happy with, like, if they use the like kind of patched, a little more balanced version that was in Europe.
Nope. The PAL version is not used for the competitive scene. It's the NA version, because
I think that's just because of like region locking.
But no, I've seen the discussions regarding that though, and some people said that they only want the NA version. They want the less balanced version.
Well, I mean, familiarity, but
so it's crazy. But basically, you have an entire audience that specifically wants one thing out of the series that, frankly speaking, they're probably never going to get again out of the series, because it's the opposite of what it was created to be, right? And so but that's a much more drastic case.
Yeah, because then you have cases like Street Fighter, where there's like
each cult is different.
There's cult following of like Third Strike in particular. But they aren't like mad at the new Street Fighters that come out.
No, they just play Third Strike.
The Third Strike players, they just play Third Strike on Fightcade, and they're like, we're happy with this.
They still hold their own tournaments and everything. Yeah. Like each. Yeah, so it does depend on your mentality, but unfortunately, it seems the Sonic fandom is a bit taken to it a bit worse, because now you have like the people who want an Adventure 3, and so then if a new game comes out that isn't Adventure 3, they get angry. But then if you have a game that comes out and it's like Frontiers, it actually, I feel like it felt like a pretty good balance between boost gameplay and adventure gameplay, because
it brought a nice serving of adventure back into the game.
With the character control, right? The amount of how snappy the control felt over Sonic, like turning and stuff and platforming.
Plus,
a little more like the adventure.
Plus, the boost isn't a button that just lets you barrel through everything anymore.
Yeah, you still have to think and avoid enemies and stuff like in Adventure series. It was a nice mid ground, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they can refine it, and they intend to. They want to bring back the spin dash. Actually, have said they want to try to find a way to implement that properly and to fine tune the drop dash.
Cool. Yeah, because there were some things that weren't quite
like jumping, halting your forward momentum,
and the drop dash not being very, very useful.
Yeah.
Other than one thing that I found, that it can actually let you climb like that icy mountain.
Yeah, I don't know how you figured that out. I never thought to use it to go upwards, because I know that it's extremely slow unless you're going downhill.
Yeah, it's not that quick, but the like slipping down thing doesn't activate while you're in the drop dash. So, but that obviously wasn't intended.
Yeah.
I broke something a little there.
But yeah, back on target though. The Sonic series is now a series where no matter what they do, somebody is not going to be happy with it, because like when Mania came out, right, it was widely lauded as one of the greatest of the classic style Sonic games to ever be released, right? Some say it's actually better than Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
I mean, debatable, but it's definitely
Sonic.
Yeah, but it's definitely Sonic Mania and Sonic 3 and Knuckles at the like top 2.
Yeah, and but there was...
I'd actually throw like Sonic Rush in there personally.
Yeah, but I even saw people who, because they never grew up playing the classic games, Zoomers, basically, Gen Zers, who were like, I just didn't find this fun, because they never played 2D platformers growing up. Because they were born after 2D platformers stopped being a thing outside the indie space, right? And they only play mainstream games, so it just had no appeal to them, right?
Well, ironically, I think a little bit of a Mario approach could work for Sonic, right? And they've said that they're looking into making more 2D games going forward as well.
It's actually already been confirmed. I just recently learned.
Yeah.
They have a studio already working on the next Sonic game, which is not the follow to Sonic Frontiers. It's going to be a side game, and I think they said they're working on that and a 2D game simultaneously.
Yeah, so I'm saying like
2D and 3D.
I think ideally, basically 2 lines: 3D Mario, 3D Sonic, 2D Sonic. Well, I'm saying kind of like Mario, where you have the 2D games and the 3D games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would work for Sonic, and have a little bit of consistency, but also variety. Yeah. Instead of doing stuff like, now you have Shadow the Hedgehog, shoot. You have the shooting gameplay the shooting gameplay in Sonic Adventure 1, as well as the Amy gameplay, the treasure hunting gameplay, the fishing gameplay.
Well, I feel like, and that's what they tried to, in Sonic 06, they tried to rectify that by making because the gameplay, like the movement and the jumping and the homing attacking was very Sonic Adventure.
Yeah.
And when they focused it down to Sonic, Silver, and Shadow, they all played very similarly, but had small gimmicks that differentiated them.
And then you had the and Friends sections in some of the stages,
where small sections
bring in like Tails or Rouge or whatnot. Yeah. But those gameplay styles were even less polished, because Tails had stuff like, the ring bottle.
Well, let's be honest,
the entire game just fly around.
The entire game is unpolished.
Finish the stage like in 30 seconds by flying over everything to test.
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. Like there was some,
but they had the right idea.
Yeah, there were some good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was not the people working on its fault. It was Sega for splitting up the team between that and
Secret Rings.
Black Knight.
No, it was Secret Rings.
Oh.
It was Sonic 06 and Secret Rings, and then forcing the Sonic 06 team to get the game out by Xbox 360's launch.
Yeah.
Which, no, they should have released it at least a year after that for it to be a more polished game. Yeah. It would have been a much better game, like exponentially better, if they had an extra year. But that aside, because at the time, a lot of people
Even
complained
on the
about.
subject anymore. Tradition and
Well, yeah, something I was gonna say is on point because with adventure,
we're on a left field.
with the adventure games introducing so many different gameplay styles for all the different characters, there were people who complained about the gameplay styles that weren't Sonic's gameplay, speed based, right?
To be
Big
fair,
platforming.
they had to suffer Big's fishing.
Yeah, but I mean, let's be honest. What did we replay the most in Sonic Adventure 2? Right, the one we played the most. It was the Sonic and Shadow stages, right?
Actually, strangely enough, as a kid, I was more drawn to the Tails and Eggman stages.
I mean, yeah. Okay, fine. Well, for me, the stages I played the most were Sonic and Shadow stages. Those were the most satisfying. Hitting a good flow in those speed-based platform stages. And I think that was a general sentiment that was shared by the majority of people.
Yeah.
Was that Sonic and Shadow's gameplay was the most fun out of all. Yeah, just overall. I mean, all the different styles had some real bunk stages. Let's be honest. But what can you do? Nothing's gonna have all perfect stages. But so what they did was they took that feedback and implemented it in 06. So they had the idea. I think they had a good idea. They just didn't execute it right because they weren't given enough time.
Yeah.
But regardless, so back on the thing, both these series have approached tradition and evolution in such different ways, right? Mario's more fine-tuning what it does well and doing it well. Sonic was tried all sorts of different new, creative things, see what sticks. Some of it's going to fail, some of it's going to do well. Go ahead.
I just had a thought. There's a completely different way to evolve that we haven't talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The sudden drastic shift. Final Fantasy.
Wow. Yeah. No, you're right. How they shifted
For
from.
so many games, it was traditional turn-based RPG, and then suddenly, with 13?
Well, so yeah, I'll go into this one because I know a bit more about it. I think it was the first 6 games, it was traditional turn-based RPG.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
different graphical
7
styles.
introduced the active time.
Yes, 7 introduced the active time bar, and that stuck through 8 and 9 as well. And I think 10 may have had the active time bar as well, and that was the first one that introduced, the full, proper PS2 3D graphics and voice acting. But they all stayed at some measure of turn-based, whether it be turn-based or turn-based with active time bar to determine when characters can act and stuff like that. And then 12 had that almost MMO-like system where you're controlling the character all the time, but then you have the auto attacking and then attack time bar for skills. It was a weird system. It's hard for me to describe.
And then 13 kind of combined active time battle and active movement.
You couldn't even move the character until 13.2 was when it became a little more real.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then 13 by itself, because it had 3 entries, remember? 13.2 and 13.3, Lightning Returns. And in the third one, it was just straight up, real-time action RPG at that point.
Yeah, and then at that point, they kind of
Almost like
Kingdom Hearts bit
Yeah.
with the one with Noctis.
Oh, yeah, and then, well, they originally were going to, but then 15 is basically just an action RPG as well. Legit, it's just an action game. And then, action RPG game. And then now, 15 is straight up action game. They got one of the combat director from Devil May Cry working on it. So it's just a straight up action game now. Yeah. And from people who work on some of the best in the
Yeah, so Final Fantasy is mostly 2 sudden shifts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your RPG styles, then your action RPG styles, and now action game. And there are some people, including some I know, who are not happy with the shift away from turn-based RPG.
Right.
And that's understandable. That's a pretty big shift, especially if they fell in love with the series during the turn-based RPG era. Then yeah, that series no longer is releasing anything that offers them what they want. There are
Fantasy was basically the game that kind of popularized turn-based RPGs in places other than Japan. right?
Yeah, because
That and Pokemon, but Pokemon's kind of its own flavor of turn-based RPG, and in Japan, it's Dragon Quest.
So yeah, Dragon Quest is still the most popular turn-based RPG series or RPG series in general in Japan. Final
And
Fantasy
it's still a turn-based RPG, right?
Yeah, although the one that still is
the one with the hero that was put in Smash Bros. Like you actually move in 3D.
I don't think so. No.
Oh, it's just the look. Okay.
Yeah, it has that look. They're all just standing.
Yeah. Never mind.
Yeah, it's Dragon Quest is through its entirety.
Yes.
The pure turn-based RPG. Final Fantasy was inspired by Dragon Quest, and they're both owned by Square Enix.
Yeah.
I think one though, it was back when they were separate companies. One was Square, one was Enix.
Right.
And then they merged.
Squaresoft and Enix.
Yes. And then they merged into Square Enix, and now they have both series, which actually, in my opinion, makes logical sense why they're like, okay, Final Fantasy's one will experiment.
Right. Keep
Dragon
Quest especially since their mindset is going to be mostly Japan focused, right? Because they're a Japanese company.
Yeah.
So the more beloved turn-based RPG game over there will stay as a turn-based RPG
because of the sensibilities of the general public. Because in Japan, they love their stat-based micromanaging, strategic type games where it's turn-based. They love their strategy RPGs and their turn-based RPGs over there. They love their, there's like one of those gacha games where it's all like strategy turn-based RPG style, and it's highly popular there. I can't remember if it was New Archive or
it's the one with the ships.
Warships. Okay, I forget what that one's called, but yeah,
Contact Collection.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Yeah, and
there are a lot of similar ones. I mean, ship goes.
Yeah, that one's like micromanaging your units and stuff like that.
Almost,
and then sending them out into auto battle. And here in America, we get bored of auto battle stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Stuff
Generally,
like Archive.
Yeah,
and.
Yeah, most people in America get tired of auto battle stuff. They see that as a negative against the game. Whereas in Japan, they like it because they prefer the micromanaging and preparation beforehand. And then seeing how it turns out. How their plan or whatever turns out, their formation or strategy. And turn-based games and stuff. So it makes more sense that the one that's more popular in Japan stays that way. And then Final Fantasy, that's more globally popular, is the one they're experimenting with to try and find stuff.
Of course, a company, especially a Japanese company, is going to make decisions mostly based on what Japanese customers want. They're going to take into account the international market as well, but obviously the domestic market is going to be more important to them. Yeah, they're wrong for that.
Yeah, it's the bigger Japanese companies that have the international hits, like Square Enix with Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts, that need to take into account the global market to an extent. Not so much that they completely go off the rails in the wrong ways.
I mean, it's not like they destroyed Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
Final Fantasy's still going.
Yeah, and they can't ignore what works for the international market for an internationally successful franchise, right?
Yeah, but if they started going Sega with because people because there's a subset of people who are like, oh, we don't like this Final Fantasy, give us the old Final Fantasy back, then they would have the Sega problem.
Yep. It's really a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation now, because regardless of if they go for tradition or evolution, they're going to upset some portion of their fan base, right?
Yeah.
And that's where they are with Final Fantasy, really, because now you have people who want the old school style, and the thing is, they can still find it from other Square Enix games, like Dragon Quest, Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, all these non-Final Fantasy games. That are basically, what was that one? Bravely Default, which is basically Final Fantasy 3 in everything but
series.
Yeah, which is basically Final Fantasy 3 in everything but name.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still going to be
Final Fantasy.
Yeah, there's still going to be plenty of people who want the series that they liked to be the thing that they like.
Yeah,
name recognition also matters too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why a lot of the recent platform fighters still haven't quite done so well because Smash Brothers dominated the market for that so long. I mean, that's why they're still often called Smash Brothers clones, but that's a subject for another time.
Yeah, like the same with Monster Hunter, right?
Yeah.
Although Wild Hearts, I've heard, has become is in place to become a worthy adversary for Monster Hunter, and that'll be something we'll discuss another time when we talk more about game genres.
Yeah.
So just a little primer or a taste of that one. Maybe our next episode. I don't know. But all I know is, yeah, Final Fantasy has basically got the Sonic problem. Dragon Quest is more like Mario, right? Where it's stuck to what it does well. It has its spin-offs, like Dragon Quest Heroes, which is the Dynasty Warriors style Dragon Quest game, but that's a spin-off. Mainline series has stayed consistent.
And then there's I'll just speak on this briefly because it's something that I've mentioned in a past episode, but Metroid, right? They completely defied the classic Metroid formula when they switched to Metroid Prime.
It was widely successful.
Then they brought back.
That one was divisive too. Actually, Prime was divisive when it came out.
It was like in retrospect.
Yeah, some people were
respected.
Well, some people were like, yeah, because when it came out, some people were like, this isn't the Metroid that I grew up playing. This isn't the Metroid I like. Other people are like, yo, this is awesome.
But then they brought back classic Metroid. I want to say Dread. Is that the first?
Yeah,
Metroidvania Metroid. No, after Prime was there
Metroid 2 Samus Returns on the 3DS.
Okay, that was that. But I mean, that was a remake.
Yeah, and then that team made Metroid Dread.
Yeah, so I don't quite count the remake because it's a game that already existed. They just, made it look so modern, and then Dread. And that was the first new Metroidvania Metroid.
And when Dread came out, there were people in the industry who were like, this is not a good game because it's old school style. They're like, it's too much old sensibilities. It doesn't, the clips of the one guy who was like the developer from God of War, who was like,
you don't see me right now, but I'm looking confused.
Yeah, who was getting mad. He was a game developer, a prolific game developer from the God of War series, who talked about how the hidden walls and stuff like that. Like there was a wall he accidentally shot. Actually, he never even accidentally shot it for some reason because he was playing it the old school. He was jumping.
I remember what you were saying.
Yeah, he was jumping and shooting straight. He wasn't using the full free aim.
She was thinking a little too Mega Man. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he never found this ceiling. Yeah, so he never found this ceiling that you could shoot out that had it had a visible indicator. There was an item above it. In like a crunch.
And the game actively teaches you, hey, you can aim.
Yeah, and hey, shoot walls because some of them can be destroyed.
Yeah.
It literally teaches you that through the game design, through the level design. This guy just didn't get it.
I guess that goes to show even game developers sometimes don't know how to play games.
Yeah. So this guy, I mean, you
just make God of War. Okay, that's a different kind of thing.
Well, it's funny though because
this is the obvious thing to hit.
Well, yeah, it shows the difference in mindset because he came from a very linear and hand-holdy series of you're going through hallways, and I'm talking
corridors of things.
Old God of War, the new ones. Old God of War. Corridor, attack at
you don't know much about the new one other than 4.
Yeah. Corridors, get locked into a room, fight all the enemies to unlock the room, and go through another corridor.
Yeah.
Very linear, very, not much room for deviating.
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of just a character action sort of thing, like Devil May Cry and
kind of
that way too?
Yeah, usually they hide secrets in nooks and crannies.
Or a brawler.
Yeah,
hallway brawler.
Yeah, because the main point is
brawl away.
The main point is the main point is engaging with the combat system in skillful ways.
Yeah.
That's the main pull for those. But
enjoying being sick with it.
Yeah. But in Metroidvania styles, again, the exploration is the point, and he just didn't get it. But then he tried to say that it was objectively bad game design, and he got blasted unanimously on the internet for it as a bad game. It was funny to see. But
we're in left field again.
Yeah, I mean the guy, his reputation didn't hold any he could get blasted. He already made his money from the God of War series. He's already doing well for himself. He doesn't need to make any more games. He's set for life.
Yeah, but anyway, I was saying, what I was going to say at a point, though, to go back. Well, I think just like any public figure, whether it's a single person or a company, a very important thing is to learn, what to listen to and what not to. Because if you start listening to too many things that don't actually matter to quality and to the bottom line, maybe the Sega problem.
Yeah. Well, even worse, listen to everyone. You'll please no one.
Yeah.
Your project will lose its identity entirely and become just a jumbled mishmash of ideas. You have to know what to wall out, what to stonewall and ignore. But yeah, Dread, when it came out, it was a kind of a departure because it was the first new classic 2D Metroid game in the style from before Prime. And then now recently, Prime got a remastered re-release on Switch, and they both did well. Dread sold like crazy well for the series, because Metroid was never one of their top-selling series.
Well, because it's been long enough since the Prime series for it to have gotten that, in retrospect, respect and following.
Yeah.
And so, remaster Prime, boom, you've got some sales there. It's not going to be like a top seller, but you're going to get a good number of, people like, hey, this is the thing that I like.
It was a financial success.
And then Metroid Dread has the same thing. Obviously, not everyone is going to be remembering the old Metroid, but you're going to get plenty that do. And you might, through those people that are so excited about it, also get some publicity, right? Of like, oh, hey, this is the late great Metroid. It's coming back.
And guess what?
And they're going to be like, hey, guys, play this. This is old school Metroid. This is good. Trust me.
Yeah. And then you know what? Metroid is doing, like you said, Sonic is what should do and is doing with old school and new school simultaneously.
Lines.
Metroid Prime 4 is still in development. And it's confirmed, it's not canceled.
Okay.
It was being developed by a certain studio, then they had to scrap all that work and hand it to it.
And I feel like this is kind of a Nintendo thing to do, also to have the two lines, because you also have Legend of Zelda, right? Drop Down and full 3D Adventure Day.
Yeah, that's true.
They did Link's Awakening DX somewhat recently.
That was a remake, though, like Metroid 2.
But then you've also got Breath of the Wild.
The Wild 2, Tears of the Kingdom.
On the heels of Skyward Sword.
Yeah. And that's getting a sequel, which Zelda games never get sequels except for, rarely, gets direct sequels, right?
Yeah.
Wind Waker did on the DS games.
And you've got the Ages games that are like cycles.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it's crazy. Like, and the Zelda series, that's actually something to briefly talk about. The Zelda 1.
We've been talking about it.
No, I'm talking about old school.
Oh.
Zelda 1, right? Was the formula that Link's the Past.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about like how Zelda 2 just like
side-scrolling platformer action.
It was completely different, and that hasn't come back at all.
No, because it did it does in the underground portions in Link's Awakening. You turn it into a side-scroller with even enemies from Nintendo games like Goombas and Koopas. It's crazy, and Piranha Plants. But it's so they did.
That was another game that, in retrospect, got a lot of like a cult following. Like, this is a hidden Legend of Zelda gem that's different from everything else.
Mm-hmm. So Nintendo, they're good at balancing multiple gameplay styles in a balanced way so that everyone has something to latch onto. Whereas with Sonic, they were doing it with the mainline games and
F-Zero back though.
Yeah. See, the problem with the Sonic Series 2 regarding that, and I think this is the last thing we should say on the Sonic series, is...
Listen, Sonic is always going to come up.
The maker is responsible for us playing games in the first place. Yeah. So it's always going to be core in our gaming, culture here. But every time something goes wrong in the mainline series, right? They do a game and they have just a bunk, just a flop, right? Then they overcorrect and they're like, okay, let's never do that again.
Yeah.
And then the people who did like it, that style or things from that style, never get what they enjoyed out of it again.
Yeah, and end up throwing away some of the good things that worked from that.
Yeah, they with the bad style, right? They threw away the good stuff with the bad stuff instead of fixing the bad stuff and refining the good stuff.
Yeah, but I'm hopeful here that with this Sonic Frontiers deal, where they're going to be making another game like in kind of the style of Sonic Frontiers, that they'll actually be once more, it'll be coming back strong and using the good things from Sonic Frontiers and polishing those as well as buffing out the
new project lead, Morio Kishimoto. Watches some videos talking about like interviews and stuff he said on social media and stuff. and the mindset seems very different from when Yuji Naka was at the company.
Yeah.
It's very much a let's iterate upon this, not let's throw this completely away and try something brand new.
And like,
Which is good.
And let's be honest, there were a good number of things that weren't quite so polished in Sonic Frontiers, but I feel like they knew what places to leave that lack of work in, like the fishing.
Yeah.
If the fishing isn't polished, like that's not something that is gonna get people up in arms. Like plenty of people, if they don't like the fishing, they can just ignore it and not get the minor benefit of being able to fast travel between, the Elder and the Cocos, because you can still like run to one in like a minute.
Yeah, and then like especially if you have the max spring boost.
Yeah.
But then like some of the other things like the upgrading of the Cocos have to do one by one. In the first free DLC, which comes out today. At the time of recording.
Came out.
By the time you listen to it, it's 5 p.m. So yeah.
We're dating this.
Well, at the time of recording, it's coming out today. By the time you listen to this, it already has released. The first DLC pack.
Don't destroy the illusion. We're recording it right when you're listening to it right now. It's a constant live stream.
Okay, no, shush. Moving on, they're fixing that. They're making it so you can upgrade in multiples, in multiple increments instead of one at a time.
Yeah.
So they know what they need to fix up, and they're fine tuning rather than just throwing the whole formula away and doing a new thing.
But you don't want to leave too many quality of life things in the unpolished section to fix later, because then it just becomes a terrible experience.
Yeah.
They didn't do that, thankfully.
Yeah. Okay, so another thing I wanted to talk about regarding tradition and evolution, and this one will be more brief, I think.
Yeah.
But let's.
I don't know what time we're on.
Oh, we still have another 10, at least, or at most. I mean. So, so there was two of them, and one was Tekken, and one was Monster Hunter.
Right.
We can talk Monster Hunter, and I think that'll be briefer. Let's do Tekken now. So
okay,
all right. Tekken series. Okay, regarding fighting games, because we both played a lot of fighting games for up until I would say the last 2 or so years. But one series,
I might be getting into Dragon Ball FighterZ again once they
the rollback.
Put the rollback in. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, because Arxis knows how to do rollback pretty well.
Yeah.
So with fighting games, some series go through a lot of changes throughout their lifespan. Series like King of Fighters, to an extent anyway. There were points in time where King of Fighters went through drastic changes where it became like tag fighters or assist fighters or tag fighters, and then but the core gameplay was always kind of the same. And so it's considered mostly a legacy game where your skills from previous entries will give you an edge on newbies in newer games. Then you have Street Fighter, like you mentioned earlier, where they went through drastic changes every generation, right? Street Fighter 2 is very different from Street Fighter 3.
And then it's like Guilty Gear, where Strive was the first big notable change that they had in a while. It was very much a legacy game before that, and some of that still did carry over to Strive.
Yeah, but it's the most different in the series.
Yes, most different there has been.
And
other than fixing the glaring balance issues that there were in the first one.
Yeah, and
because that was just a passion project.
Yeah. So back in the days, that was actually what inspired this topic idea back when our podcast was just fighting game centered.
Yeah.
Because Guilty Gear Strive was drastically different from previous entries in the series, which were all very much samey across the 4 different games.
Yeah.
And
there was a lot of pushback from the
veteran players.
Some of the legacy players who are like, hey, don't make it a game that we can't just still dominate because we've been the best for a while.
Yeah, a lot of legacy veteran players didn't like the new stuff because it was too different.
Don't want to learn something new. We already did our homework.
Yeah.
For Guilty Gear. Drive, Xrd, Accent, Legacy Edition, Ultimate Edition.
Yeah. And so, but it was a case where making the changes made it the most successful entry in the whole series.
Yeah.
Because what it was before was a bit too unapproachable for the majority of people out there who play video games in generality.
And so the big fighting games that are coming up currently are Tekken 8 and Street Fighter 6.
Yeah.
Get the numbers.
Yeah. So here's a big thing. So in most recent, and I've been keeping up with this, but Sai hasn't. So I'll be having to tell him in real time stuff about the Tekken 8.
I know some of this stuff, but it's very loose.
Yeah. So Tekken is a series where since Tekken 5, the games that came out have not made many changes gameplay wise. They've been mostly the same.
I mean, there was like 1 or 2 games where there was elevation changes in the stages.
That was Tekken 4.
That was
Just one. And it didn't work very well, so they threw it away. They went back to what worked in Tekken 3, but refined it for Tekken 5. Yeah, so generally, if you liked Tekken 3 and 5, you're pretty much set in Tekken 6, Tag Tournament 2, and 7. The minor differences in gameplay, additions, new mechanics. They changed the bounce mechanic, bound with the tailspin, minor changes like that.
And 7 added the blue stuff.
Rage arts, rage drives. But aside from that, the core gameplay remained the same, and aside from minor changes. So the people who were good at the game and played it the longest were just inherently good at the game. Like us, we played since Tekken 6, so when we picked up 7, it wasn't that hard to learn a character and get decent at the game.
Yeah.
Be decently proficient, right? Competent.
Casual competitive.
Yeah. I mean, heck, I actually went and competed in some tournaments, and in one monthly tournament, I got 7th place. So I wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I wasn't as good, I think, but I was a solid, like, Dragon Out Ball player.
Yeah. And so, our having played it since, casually since Tekken 6, aided us 2 iterations later, right? Because of the legacy skill element of it.
The tag,
Tag 2 and then 7, 2 iterations later. 6?
Tag 2 came
After 6. Yeah, it was 6.
Because they had Lars.
Where we started, then Tag 2, then 7.
Because Lars is Tekken 6 boy.
Yeah. So 2 iterations later, our skills from, those 2 prior iterations, I should say, of casual playing aided us in Tekken 7.
Yeah.
Tekken 8, though, they are shaking things up quite a bit. So, if you've been keeping up with it, you've heard rumblings surrounding one word: aggressive. Harada went on record saying that the dev team has been focusing on one word in their design, and that gameplay design, that is aggressive. They want, and then said, they want the player who is attacking to be having fun and feel like they're making some progress.
Right.
Problem is, in a PvP game, that always comes at the expense of the defending player.
Well, and also Tekken has always been a game where pokes are very important.
Yes, pokes and defensive. Yeah,
of the game.
In Tekken, historically, the foundation of one's skill set starts with movement and defense. If you know how to move and you know how to defend, then you can figure out when you can punish and when you can put in those pokes and when you can use those bigger launching.
Yeah, moving, poking, spacing, trying to stay safe while feeling out an opening on the opponent's side, knowing which way to, what attacks to sidestep, which way to sidestep, and when you can get your unsafe launcher to bigger damage.
Generally, when learning Tekken, you want to start with movement and defense. Then you learn your few moves that you can, like your key moves, and when to use those moves, and then you're good. The rest comes with experience and playing. And the more you play, the better you'll be, and those skills.
And then you get down your combos from starters.
Yeah, for doubles.
I mean that's just a fighting game.
Yeah, but you're not going to be using those that much once you get to the point where both players are competent, because you're both trying to stay safe.
Yeah, like in Tekken especially, you don't want to be a tech baby where you have the best combos but no fundamentals.
Yeah, but in Tekken 8, they're moving away from that fundamental focus. What they're doing now is they're adding more stuff that is positive on block. So more stuff with advantage when hitting the opponent's guard. The heat system. So certain moves build up your heat gauge, right? Well, attacking is how you build up your heat gauge. And certain moves activate heat mode. And then while you have heat mode active, that gauge is slowly draining, but attacking keeps it from draining. because attacking refills that meter. So the more you're attacking, the longer you get to stay in heat mode. Serving aggression.
Yeah,
and then, guess what you can do with heat mode? Everyone has a universal heat dash cancel. So out of moves, you can dash cancel into a forward run. So basically you hit the opponent with a big move that puts them into a lot of block stun, where they can't act, and you just get to run forward and they just have to hold the mix.
Yeah, because
There's no recourse.
that sounds like something that the Tekken players automatically wouldn't like. Because if I remember correctly, it's been a while, but didn't people really not like Dragunov while he was top tier because he was so good at both confusing frame traps and plus on block move with that 4-4-4-2 running haymaker.
Because it was one move that once you knew how to do it consistently,
How to do the instant running haymaker.
there was really no downside to it unless the opponent sidestepped in the right direction to avoid it.
And it was easiasier than electric wing outfits.
So they're taking that, but they're basically making all characters that, because say Paul Phoenix, for example,
Right.
you know, what people call the Death Fist, right? The Phoenix Smasher. It's just a one big power punch, right?
Or circle forward too.
It has so much knockback, pushback, even on block, and has a lot of block stun. Well, now in heat mode, you can heat dash cancel after that, and then just mix the opponent high-low mix or high-low throw mix. If they block it. And if their back hits the wall, it puts them to that stun. You get a free follow-up from the heat dash cancel.
Right.
Free follow-up. Meaning you can just do that, make them back bump to the wall, which puts them into an open, like, a no damage hit stun or a tiny damage hit stun, meaning they can't block the follow-up if you do it fast enough. Heat dash cancel forward into the run, and then just death fist them again. And then that wall's flat, and you can death fist again. And that's like more than half your health gone. You know? Like, that's literally, conceptually anyway, what this seems to be opening up the game to, is stuff where, for attacking, you gain such drastic advantage.
To be honest, that gets my Death Fist and blood going. Like, Death Fist is just satisfying, but it also sounds like dumb stuff.
Well, yeah, more than now it seems like it. Anyway, this is all theoretical because no one's been able to play the game yet. But from what we know, also
3 Death Fists, heavy breathing.
all characters gain access to new moves while heat mode is active.
Right.
So new stuff that they can do.
Okay.
And so essentially what they said though is that heat mode is something you can only activate once per round. So you can either choose to activate it early or late because everyone starts with full heat gauge. So you can either do a move to activate it.
That just sounds like it's an evolution of the blue stuff from Tekken 7.
Yeah, like you can do it at any point in an all round, every round, instead of it being tied to being low health. I mean, comeback mechanic.
People already kind of don't like rage mechanics, comeback mechanics sometimes.
Yeah, pretty much. So now this is taking it and applying it through the whole match. But and Tekken players historically don't like meter mechanics because the series traditionally never had them. No, they hate the 2D characters in Tekken 7 like Akuma and Geese who have meter mechanics, and because those meter mechanics have way higher damage potential, right?
Hey, when's the last time you saw Geese?
Actually, Geese is top tier now.
Really?
In the meta.
I think it's mostly Akuma though.
Both are really high tier now. Both are constantly winning tournaments now. Like once people figured out how to execute their good stuff consistently, now the people are just annoyed at fighting them because they're like, gosh, now I make one mistake and I lose 65% of my health.
I mean, Akuma's plenty crazier than Geese though.
He is, yes. But he's also harder to do that stuff with. Geese is the one who's like more prolific online play, because he's easier to do the good stuff with, and he's comparable to Akuma in burst damage potential. And arguably has better mix with his record and stuff, you know? So,
I mean, a lot of that record stuff is fake.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. It's been years.
Regardless, this heat mechanic though, and then the fact, and then here's another thing that makes the game more dealing damage to opponents. So there's chip damage in Tekken 8 now, across the board.
Okay.
Not just things like, Akuma's super Go Hadoken, right? His super projectile that does chip damage. Now, all big, like hard-hitting moves like the Phoenix Smasher do chip damage now. And that chip damage turns into basically white life or gray life, from Street Fighter 5.
Right.
Recoverable life.
Red health.
Yeah, recoverable health. The way you recover it, hitting the opponent or hitting their guard. So it becomes this tug of war, this push and pull of I'm dealing chip damage to them.
Like, because usually red health is like a matter of time thing and not getting hit while you have it.
Nope, now hitting the opponent while you have recoverable health is how you recover it. So you have to be aggressive to recover that health.
Okay, yeah, that sounds backwards.
Yeah, it is weird. So yeah, once you've taken chip damage, you have to get back in and attack in order to recover.
Because usually red health is a matter of time, and if it's a tag fighter, then it's while they're tagged out.
Yeah, but in this game, your recoverable health only comes back if you are hitting the opponent.
Yeah, that sounds kind of backwards. And also
forcing players to go in and attack constantly.
And also, unfortunately, to a degree that I'd say in this case is sometimes negative. Barada is don't ask me for anything. He's not going to listen to the feedback. And sometimes that might be good, but it might be bad.
When right now you've got the majority of your player base having a negative impression of it and fearful for not being able to enjoy this entry. The problem is with fighting games, cases like Guilty Gear Strive pulling in more new players than veteran players it lost is a rarity in the genre. With Tekken 7 and with Tekken 8, it's hard to tell if doing this is going to draw in more players than it loses.
Yeah.
Because it's already became one of, if not the most popular fighting game of the last generation. Yeah, because Street Fighter was doing so bad, Street Fighter 5, Tekken 7 rose to the top.
Yeah, because fighting games especially, you need to balance the customers you already have and the new customers you want to gain.
Yeah, so things are looking real shaky for Tekken 8 right now. There's a lot of people online who are like, yo, this looks great. I'm already an aggressive player, so I'm gonna love this. Or, yo, I didn't care for Tekken much before, but this looks fun for me now because I can go in and just kind of, do things and be rewarded for it. And then you have longtime players who are like, yo, they're making defense matter so much less, or they're not even rewarding you. They haven't even shown off a single mechanic tied to the heat gauge that is defensive in nature.
Yeah,
they're all aggressive.
To see some people have said even you have said at some points with Street Fighter 6, aggression and the what's it called, the big attack that
driving
back, being able to knock back into the corner and get a combo and whatnot. But you still have the parry mechanic as well.
Yeah, but right now there's no revealed mechanics tied to that resource.
Yeah,
that can be used to offset the aggression.
And there have been some people I think Maximilian Dude who's saying hey, parry is more strong than people are really realizing yet.
Yeah, and
that's that remains to be seen.
My problem with
the offensive mechanics are easier to use.
Yeah.
So
and very strong.
So I think it's plausible that the parry is very strong as well, just harder to use.
The problem with that though, that I have with it, is if you have no meter, then you're just screwed. If you have no drive gauge and your opponent does, and they use the aggressive drive thing, sometimes it's a checkmate situation. There's nothing you can do. If they use it on your wake up on Oki and your back is to the corner, you don't have time to jump out of the way. You're still going to get hit by it.
You have to. That's why you have to balance proactive with reactive, I guess.
Yeah. So when I was playing the beta, there were times where it felt good, and there were times where it was utterly frustrating, but not as frustrating as a lot of other modern fighting games for me. So that's definitely an improvement.
Yeah, I couldn't play the beta at the time.
Yeah, but with Tekken 8, right now everything is so.
Was the beta even on Steam? Was it just?
Yeah, it was cross-play.
Yeah, I couldn't play.
Yes.
It's my hand.
But yeah, it's crazy because it was Tekken 8, this heat mechanic is so far it seems all aggression.
Right.
And then the push and pull of the recoverable health. And the fact that you start with full heat gauge, and the only way to gain heat gauge or keep it from depleting while heat mode is active is to attack. So basically playing defensive has nothing but downsides in this game.
Yeah, literally. Because that reminds me of making the most of it while it's active reminds me of for instance the forget what it's called in King of Fighters. Max
mode, and Street Fighter V's V trigger.
But max mode always goes down no matter what. You just have to make the most of it while you have it. It's not like you get more time while you're hitting.
And in the inverse, actually, interesting case with Luke in Street Fighter V, V trigger 1, it's refills with time if you're not using it, meaning the opponent has to come at you to deplete it. But they went, this is the opposite, where like if you have this special mode active where you have access to the dash cancels and unique moves, you have to you can keep attacking to keep it from emptying. Basically, they took Soul Calibur.
Oh, you can dash cancel as much as you want in.
No, it costs a chunk.
Okay, it costs a chunk.
But then if you dash cancel and then you start hitting the opponent afterwards, you're gaining that meter back.
Yeah, but it's probably not sustainable to the point where you could stay in it forever if you keep getting the.
No, I think they showed it. They said if you keep, like, they showed them constantly jabbing, and it was refilled, keeping it full at max full. Of course, that's just constant string of jab.
Yeah.
But so executionally, probably not. You know, functionally, if both are playing the game, probably not.
Yeah, effectively.
Yeah, but still, it's definitely has a huge skew towards offense. And then,
yeah, I'm not
they
sure
took
about that one.
They basically took Soul Calibur 6's Soul Charge. You know, basically a temporary install, like a super mode, basically, which gave you access to new moves and stuff, like basically drive impact type moves, essentially.
Yeah.
They took that and implemented it in Tekken.
But you kind of just get one in Soul Calibur, right?
No, in Soul Calibur, Soul Charge,
I know there's a certain amount of time where you can.
yeah, you can have a maximum of 2 gauges, 2 full gauges, and it costs 1 full gauge.
But it does. But like, it's not so much like. You know, you get access to the different tools, which can either capitalize with more damage off a certain attack, or like it gives you a certain utility that you don't always have.
Yeah,
it wasn't necessarily an all aggressive kind of.
No, it's so Soul Charge, put simply, was you spend 1 full bar of gauge and you temporarily become OP, basically an OP version of your character. You know, you get some really strong tools, but you still have to make good use of those tools. It's not just a win button. But your character does become very potentially strong during that mode, and they implement this in a different way into Tekken. The problem is, Soul Charge in Soul Calibur 6 was one of the things a lot of us long-term Soul Calibur fans did not like about Soul Calibur 6. It's one of the things that actually made it less enjoyable than previous entries. And so then they're like, let's put that in Tekken. You know, it's so backwards for a lot of longtime players. This is a case where their attempt at evolving it, because like, I will say one thing. The presentation in Tekken 8 is way better than even in Tekken 7. And Tekken 7 already made improvements in presentation over 6, and with the slowdowns and stuff, and like the camera zooms on certain moves. Well, they've taken that a step further. So the presentation is even better now.
Yeah.
It's actually honestly very cool, some of the presentational stuff, but mechanically, it is a lot more shaky for the long-term fans. So it's hard to tell if this is an evolution or a step backwards, because it seems like it may be a case of making things better for the spectator, but worse for the players, or at least a huge subset of players who aren't aggressive focused or very casual, who want to just press buttons and see cool stuff happen. You know?
Yeah.
And the question is, will this draw in more people than it loses, like Guilty Gear Strive did, or is it going to affect it negatively, like with Street Fighter V, where trying to cater to the esports actually was more negatives than positives? You know, initially, until they made changes and eventually made it a better product by the end of its lifespan.
Well, I guess we've got our prediction, right?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Honestly, me as a Tekken fan since 6. Tekken 7 itself was making changes in Season 3 that pushed me away from the game.
Yeah.
They decreased the amount of knockdown attacks. They drastically increased attack and wall, juggle carry across the board, and just in general made the game more aggressive from how it started. And then Tekken 7 itself nerfed movement and defense from Tekken 6 and Tekken 2. So Tekken 7 already was making changes in that direction that Tekken 8's going, but smaller change.
So are we making a CounterPick official prediction?
No, because it's really hard to tell, because I've already accepted that regarding fighting games. my opinion is different from the majority, even in the FGC. In the fighting
but I feel
community.
like
my preferences in gameplay are a minority among the minority.
yeah, but I feel like compared to other fighting games, though, a lot of Tekken players are more inclined toward defense than a lot of the other fighting games. So I want to say that this is gonna go so well.
Well, no, like I said, it entirely depends on how many new players and how many casual players they draw in. Because if they draw in more than the veteran players who leave, or who stick with Tekken 7 and 6 or whatever, then it could be like Guilty Gear Strive.
Well,
because a lot of the Guilty Gear hang on. A lot of the Guilty Gear Accent Core players and XR players, like a lot of the XR players didn't like Accent Core, right? Or hang on, a lot of the Accent Core players didn't like XR, so they just stuck with Accent Core. And then that game got rollback, right? Retrofitted with rollback, so they still played that game. A lot of the XR players don't care for Accent Core, and they don't like Strive. So they stuck with XR, and XR eventually got rollback, so they still play that game. Strive brought in a lot of new players. There was a lot of people who had never played Guilty Gear or had never played fighting games who were playing the
This is what I'm gonna say something about, because okay, this is just based on me speculating, but I feel like Guilty Gear gets more new players just based on the aesthetic. It's so striking. It's it's metal. It's got the crazy characters, right? More people who don't know anything about Guilty Gear, if they see Guilty Gear, they're like, "Whoa, what's this? Let me check it out." Tekken, on the other hand, is a lot more realistic and grounded in its design, in its aesthetic. So I feel like that wouldn't bring in as many people from the outside who don't know what it is already. So they're just going to be like, oh, fighting people. It's like a lot of the other things that I see, because we know the differences in aesthetic as people in the gaming sphere between a lot of these fighting games, but from an outsider's perspective, a lot of it is going to look the same, right?
Especially since we have 20 years of experience with the genre.
So if you don't already know what it is, something like Tekken isn't going to look that different from something like Dead or Alive, because they both look like relatively realistic.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because some people are saying that the new art style in Tekken 8, they're likening it to being Mortal Kombat-like. Especially when they look at Law, when he's flexing and got the veins popping out and stuff, and the face, they're like, this looks almost Mortal Kombat. And they're like, some feel like it kind of lost its visual identity.
Yeah, and Mortal Kombat gets more people on it because you get a certain type of person that wants the fiery, the ninjas, the brutality.
Yeah.
But Tekken doesn't necessarily have as much of a strikingly different visual aesthetic.
It's funny because Tekken is the second.
Guilty Gear has that weird draw where it's anime, but it's also metal.
Yeah.
So you don't get the dramatic, ew, what's this from the normie.
Yeah, like with
that or anime, and they're just they already have an idea what that is, because Guilty Gear is an entirely different kind of anime aesthetic. It's
but it's
funky in a different way.
So interestingly enough, Tekken is actually the highest selling fighting game franchise of all time. The highest selling fighting game of all time is still Street Fighter 2. But the highest selling franchise of all time,
you're talking about all the different entries. Yeah.
All entries combined, Tekken has surpassed Street Fighter in sales back during Tekken 7's lifespan.
Yeah, because now Street Fighter 3 didn't do so well originally.
Yeah, so now here's the thing. People know Tekken mostly because of the history. They're like, I remember playing that on PlayStation. I remember playing that on PlayStation 2.
But that's not the new players.
Yeah, so Tekken is very recognizable, but mostly to people who have seen it in the past, not people who are completely new to the genre now.
Which is going to be a Venn diagram that's almost a circle with your current your current customers, the people who are already players. So that doesn't really. It's not really that relevant.
So it's interesting to watch. My expectations are low for myself being able to enjoy the game. I'm still curious to see.
You're getting into a CounterPick here.
It's hard to predict, because the thing is, the casual market is is predictable and unpredictable at the same time.
Come on, we gotta take hard stances. We gotta be provocative. You know?
Yeah, I don't know. Because here's the thing. Here's my thought process.
We
Okay.
can't be balanced and reasonable all the time. We gotta make a statement.
Here's my thought process. Okay. Here's Sam's thought process on this. The Dr. Sam take. Okay, and I'm gonna work through this and come to like a conclusion. Okay, that's my aim here. So, the casual market is highly predictable, right? In what they like mainstream, right? Think about how popular things like Fortnite and Apex are, right? And Call of Duty and Madden, and the casual market is pretty predictable. But when it comes to more niche genres like fighting games, the reaction to the casual market is highly unpredictable. Because it generally doesn't cross into the mainstream circles very much, the mainstream eye. Generally, when you say fighting games, people think Street Fighter first. That's the one that is culturally most significant outside of the niche.
Or Mortal Kombat.
Or Mortal Kombat, yes. Pretty much everyone you talk to who has played video games in their life have either played or know of either Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. Regarding fighting games.
Because Street Fighter is the fighting game, and Mortal Kombat is the one that made it stink.
And has the most casuals because it offers more content and appeal beyond the niche.
Yeah, a lot more single player, and you have a lot of people,
Story modes, single player
play Mortal Kombat and no other fighting games.
Yeah, and they don't even play online. They're just playing Mortal Kombat themselves. They're not even playing versus online. So, and other games like it, like from the same people, like Injustice 2, when that was the newest.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not just Mortal Kombat, but it's NRS games.
And like I've met like this kid at work, for instance, who like I say kid, young adult, whatever, who does like MMA and stuff, and he also plays Mortal Kombat. Like that's the kind of people that you get in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Which you don't necessarily get nearly as much of in any other fighting game.
So with regards to Tekken 8, Tekken 7 only hit the big success it did because Street Fighter 5 flopped so hard, came out of the gate so rough, right? And that allowed other fighting games to prosper more, right? And that's when you had Dragon Ball FighterZ hit the scene. You had Tekken 7 rose.
Give me a prediction, man.
I feel like if Tekken 8 keeps going in the direction it's going, and there's no, they don't buff movement to counteract this aggressiveness, right? They don't buff defense via like giving defensive mechanics using the heat gauge or whatever, heat mode. Like maybe a heat breaker kind of thing, where if you have heat mode active, you can break out of any combo or something, something like that, or out of any block string, where it's like a reset to neutral kind of thing, a blowback attack or something. If they don't balance this out, they're going to lose the majority of the veteran audience. Just like Guilty Gear Strive did. Regarding casuals, the presentation in this game is going to draw in a lot of casuals. They're going to see this and say, that looks cool. The ones who try it are going to press a lot of buttons and get rewarded with a lot of aggressive stuff. But some have said that this heat stuff seems almost like it'll be too complex for the casual people. Whereas Guilty Gear Strive simplified things. I think that's the big difference.
Okay. Yeah, they aren't really simplifying in
They're adding mechanics. They're like, in heat mode, you can do heat dash cancel, special heat mode attacks, and maybe even more stuff, And people are like, this is a lot to, even people who know Tekken, we're looking at this, are like, that's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I don't know if the casuals are going to get all of this off the gates. I think that's where they're going wrong.
Yeah, because conversely, you see Street Fighter 6, right? Yeah, they've gotten a lot of new mechanics, but they replaced the old B mechanics that were in Street Fighter 5. Right?
Here's the Dr. Sam prognosis.
Okay.
Tekken 8 is not going to benefit from this as much as Guilty Gear Strive did. Tekken 8 is going to lose a lot of the veteran players like Guilty Gear Strive did, but it's gonna have more spectators than players amongst the casuals market. That's my prediction.
Their spectators don't make sales.
Exactly. Spectators boost the tournament scene because they're watching or the streaming scene, right? But doesn't always translate into sales. Some might watch and say, I want to play this, and then they'll play it, buy it, and play it a little bit, and then drop it, right? So that's not a long-term customer for DLC and stuff, right? That's just an initial sale, and that's it. Or they'll wait until it's on discount and buy it. Whereas Guilty Gear Strive had a lot of people buying it out the gate. I think this is going to be more of a negative than a positive.
Well, I'm going to make here a Professor Prime mad hypothesis. Trademark. I don't care if it's cringe. Shut up. I'm gonna say Guilty Gear. I think Guilty Gear just gets a lot more new people to try it based on the aesthetic, whereas I think to the layman, in even though like the quality of the presentation is definitely improved, people still aren't going to, or they're not going to focus on the elements of the presentation that have made it better. They're just still going to think, oh, generic, strong, punchy man. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say an 8 flop.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's going to flop.
I'm going to say it's going to flop.
Okay. A spicy take for
I'm going to say
Side Prime. Okay. Yeah, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to flop. It's still going to sell comparably to Tekken 7, I think. Maybe a little bit.
One of us have to be the outrageous one here.
Yeah, that's fine. You can fit that role.
I'll do it.
All right. But yeah, I think it's not going to sell horribly.
Evolution or Rebellion. I'll be the...
It's not going to sell poorly, but I don't think it's going to gain as many sales as they feel it might, compared to Tekken 7. I don't think it's going to be a huge bump up like Guilty Gear Strive was compared to every entry.
Okay. Clarify too, like, flop doesn't necessarily mean that something doesn't profit, right? A lot of these companies,
generally,
like, it didn't make enough money, so it failed.
Well, most people think of flop as an utter failure.
Well, I mean, compared to things like, if something makes money, but it doesn't, like, exceed,
right?
For a lot of companies, that is a flop still.
Yeah, most publishers want the product to more than double the development costs, right?
Yeah.
So, or investors particularly, yeah. So, yeah, it may end up in that range. It may not. The development.
So I'm saying flop.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm gonna keep my eyes on this because I want to have a new fighting game to kind of relight that fire in me for the genre. But I don't
Honestly,
think
I'm looking at
Street
Street Fighter 6.
Yeah, Well,
that's what I'm looking.
Here's my problem. After playing the beta, it kind of reset my expectations a bit. I was gonna make a video on it, but I haven't gotten around to it, so I'll just say it here.
I haven't been able to play it, so
yeah.
Unfortunately,
when I played the beta,
circumstances,
it did temper my hype a bit. Game looks great. Sometimes it feels great. Other times, my playstyle feels utterly punished. Like penalized. In some, but the thing is, it's not as bad as like Guilty Gear. It's not like the game's not taking away my meter for playing defensively. You know what I mean? With negative penalties, or adding risk, which increases the damage I take.
Like, I'm more of an aggressive player than you, but even I have sometimes have issues with had issues with negative penalty when I was playing Guilty Gear Strive. I've fallen out of those.
Street Fighter 6 at least gives defensive players like me effective things we can do. Even if they don't feel as strong as the offensive mechanics, they are usable. They're useful, and they are there. The two things I don't like everything being tied to the drive gauge, including it being a guard gauge, and I don't like having no invincible dragon punches, short use. But unless you spend meter on them, but those are relatively minor in comparison to things that frustrate me.
You're never gonna find a fighting game that everything caters to. Like, you just you
have to find ones that have more pros than cons for you. That's basically when it comes to the genre. That's what you gotta do.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to honestly Samurai Showdown 2019 having rollbacks more than anything. Once that gets rolled back, I'll jump back into that because I enjoy that game.
I haven't thought about Samurai Showdown 300 years.
I know, but when that gets rolled back, it'll probably be my most enjoyed fighting.
I think there are like serious balance issues in that one though.
I think it's gotten better recently.
With the early guy.
Oh, they fixed that already, and they've released 2 whole waves.
Well, that shows how out of date I am on Samurai
Yeah,
Shodown.
they released 2 whole waves of DLC characters, dude, and 2 free DLC characters. So, yeah. But regardless,
It's Samurai Shodown. I had a little bit of fun with it and then I moved on.
but yeah, so like the fighting genre is one where
And like, I thought you playing it one day and like the connection and the
Oh, it was
ability to find even opponents was just like,
oh yeah, no, the rollback's gonna fix that for sure.
alright.
But so the fighting, so in conclusion,
Sure, I even have that game.
no, you don't. I have it on PS, on PlayStation.
Hey, because that was before I had my PC yet.
Yeah. So, in conclusion though, the genre of the fighting genre, and maybe we'll go into this in depth in another episode, but the fighting genre really struggles with tradition versus evolution because
Are we out of time or are we going to talk about Monster?
I want to talk about Monster Hunter and we have a half hour to go. So that's why I'm just going to do this quick conclusion for that, for the fighting game genre, and then we'll transition into that. So yeah, the fighting game genre has historically struggled with tradition and evolution because for the longest time they kind of were stuck in the arcade tradition. And after the arcades died out everywhere but like Japan, designing your fighting game like an arcade game just doesn't work for the home console market, you know?
Yeah.
And it showed. It became a smaller niche than all other competitive genres that are still around, you know? Other than, say, real-time strategy, which is more obscure, but, you know, like I said, all the ones that are still going strong have surpassed the fighting game genre many times over. And that's because the developers are only just now figuring out how to when and where to deviate from tradition and try to evolve the series. Now they're just figuring out how to do it. You know, they're figuring out that they need to do it now. They're figuring out, and we have cases of Guilty Gear Strive, which benefited from evolving their series past the traditional design.
Yeah.
And then we have games like Street Fighter 5 that did it in the wrong ways and suffered for it. And now we have Tekken 8 where it's up in the air right now, but not looking great.
Yeah.
Another series though that had this thing and went in a more positive direction was Monster Hunter.
Yeah. Because, okay, outline it real quick. Monster Hunter basically has two styles, right? Which for most of the time, it's been the more kind of clunky, slow plot planning, you know, you're executing a plan.
Yeah,
And
and action is a huge part of it.
you're not like this superhero that's flying around and fighting giant monsters, and you're like, doing like Spider-Man in the first Raimi movie, swinging around. Then you have Rise, which goes a little bit more into the
Well, World was the change.
World was still a bit more like of the slower Monster Hunter.
From what I've heard, actually, the movement and like the responsiveness and snappiness of the controls and stuff feels more like Rise than it does the games before it.
Okay, so that was like the transition game.
Yeah, World was the turning point.
And then Rise is a bit more like takes some more elements of like action game basically.
They did experiment with some stuff in Generations though, like the hunter skills. Like I've seen one where they do like a light blade kind of strike and stuff, but it still had the old school clunky feeling to the movement and attacking in general.
But yeah, but Monster Hunter Rise gets a little more action gamey. It gets rid of stuff like having to have a stock of whetstones because they're items that get consumed. Getting rid of the cold and hot drinks for hot and cold areas, so you aren't constantly losing health.
Yeah,
Having to mark a monster so you can track it on your map. You know, I remember doing a lot more bomb stuff, like tracking a monster going back to its lair.
Yeah.
No, bombs. When it goes back and sleeps at its lair. When I was playing Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate on the 3DS.
right.
Now, in Monster Hunter Rise, like, yeah, you can do that. But honestly, I have not. I usually just when I follow it back to where it falls asleep, I'm like, all right, swing. If I'm playing a weapon that can do like a big exploding attack, then go for the big exploding attack.
Yeah.
And just point the thing.
Yeah, there are all sorts of newer ways to do DPS that you don't need to rely on bombs when they're sleeping these ways. So to kind of expand upon that, the Monster Hunter series, can be split into two camps, so to speak. And they've been referred to colloquially in the community as Old World and New World. New World being Monster Hunter World and Rise.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And in Monster Hunter World, they call it the New World because you leave the world, the area of the old games, and you enter an uncharted world.
Okay.
So yeah, the Old World and the New World. It's actually kind of born from stuff in Monster Hunter World at that turning point. So yeah, the Old World games had a certain type of design. Very niche though, because there was a lot of clunk and like inconvenience elements that were baked into it. Like for example, if you are going on a specific quest and you forget to bring something, like empty out your pouch and restock it with stuff you'll need for that specific hunt, and you go to that, you initiate the quest, then you realize you forgot something, you just gotta quit the quest and go all the way back through the loading screens and the menus, the hub and the menus, and do it again. Because not having that one thing could ruin your whole hunt.
And sometimes you even just gotta take time to go into a quest just to go get whetstones.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to sharpen your blade and not worry about running out of whetstones, because that could ruin a hunt entirely.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure you have cold drinks for hot areas, hot drinks for cold areas.
Just operate at base level.
Yeah.
Base capacity, not increased capacity.
It's comparable to like simulator survival games having like hunger gauges or thirst gauges.
Yep. And I spoke about this a little bit more in depth in Morning Buddha, but I pointed out that mechanics that are an inconvenience that like take away from you if you don't engage with them, but don't give you anything higher than your base capacity, those can be removed or changed as a quality of life improvement, and it's not gonna ruin the experience.
Well, it would apply to the niche players who are like, oh, I want to feel like a monster hunter.
Yeah, but
I'm preparing, I have all these things.
My answer to that is immersion. It matters up to a point where immersion is important if it enhances the experience, not if failing to engage with it takes away from the experience. I'm like, these are still video games at the core. If you want something that's fully immersive, simulators are the way to go.
Yeah.
Because they're a different beast altogether. If you're playing a video game, immersion shouldn't create an inconvenience. Shouldn't take away from the experience if you don't engage with it. And they shifted it. Like in Monster Hunter Rise, the preparation stage isn't necessarily the how it was in the old games. It's the spirit birds that you find on the map.
Now, I will say, even though I didn't like how you had to have a store of whetstones and the hot drinks and the cold drinks and whatnot, there was a certain level of satisfaction for Ultimate of like knowing how the monster things, acting like a ranger, like a tracker. You know your enemy.
Yeah.
You know where they're gonna go. You mark them so that you can follow them.
Apparently, World really expanded upon that with the
with how the
light bugs
get more like perhaps living world sort of thing. They go to different places at different
find
times.
tracks, scratches on trees, different endemic things like that.
But so there is that kind of satisfaction to a well-executed plan that is lost in Rise, but I still enjoy Rise for what it is.
Yeah, and in the end, the series from Monster World Rise, it benefited from letting go of some of those immersive inconvenience factors and making quality of life changes that made it a more fun video game, more so than a simulation. It benefited in Monster Hunter World became Capcom's single highest selling game.
But also
all time.
The key difference that makes that work better for getting new customers than fighting games is, fighting games by their nature are person versus person, whereas something like Monster Hunter is you can play it solo even, but when you're playing multiplayer, it's cooperative. That brings in more people because you need to be a certain type of person for PvP competitive to appeal to you more.
So that is an inherent inherent advantage. And then all Monster Hunter needed was to make certain changes to not push away more customers than it drew in, which is exactly what Monster Hunter World did. And then it exploded in popularity and growth and became their highest selling game of all time. Capcom, the Monster Hunter World did, or Monster Hunter World?
Rise. Oh, okay.
Rise hasn't sold as much as World, but it's still way up there.
Yeah.
It's still way up there. And so this was a case where focusing on evolution in ways that didn't compromise the core game feel, the core game tenets, right? They were able to evolve the series, and it has been nothing but benefited since then. There's still those people who prefer the old world style of Monster Hunter games, but in this case, they are the overwhelming minority, and they still have games they can play. Just like we said with the fighting game ones, right? Like Street Fighter, people still play Third Strike if they don't care about the games after that. The Monster Hunter community can do the same thing, and they do often, although some complain a bit more, but yeah.
Yeah, but like talking about other games and then fighting games are going to be treated more like a sport would be, right?
Yeah.
There's that intrinsic higher level of the players who are dedicated to being invested in the integrity of it, because it's supposed to show who is better between this person and that person when you go up against each other, whereas that is intrinsically not there in something like Monster Hunter, because you are not comparing one person's skills to another, you're pooling multiple people's skills into a collective that go against what you're putting them up against in the game.
Yeah. And so, but that is, I do still consider Monster Hunter an example of evolution done right. For sure. And all the results support it.
I'm just saying, because of those aspects, it's always going to be more delicate in fighting games.
Yes, very much so. And then with single player games,
it's easier to draw in new players while not alienating the old in single player games.
Yeah, though like
or PvE games.
Though like we were saying before with the Mario and Sonic, those are solely single player games, and they are very delicate too.
That had its own problems
and nuances. So it's a very nuanced discussion, which is why we are talking about it here. Those are our favorite types of discussions on this channel. Definitely an interesting topic. And for myself, I can't say I prefer one over the other, because it depends on the case. You know, like with Tekken, I would have preferred it to be a bit more traditional, and fighting games in general to be a bit more like they were in 2002 to 2012, right? Before they started changing the way they designed them to cater to more to the casual and aggressive, mostly offensive players, right?
But then Monster Hunter Rise actually got you into it, whereas I was already playing Monster Hunter in 4 Ultimate, though I eventually lost the drive to keep playing it solo. But I played it solo way longer than you did.
I never got past low rank 2.
To be fair, it's also because I had more time at the time. Because I'm
that's true.
Still isn't having problems.
So you know, and in my case, if Monster Hunter Rise
working already.
If Monster Hunter Rise wasn't different as it is from the old world Monster Hunter games, I never would have gotten into it.
But we're not always going to be Kylo Ren, kill the past.
No, the path can continue to exist. The Monster Hunter Rise being what it is what allowed me to get into it so much. And now I'm more than 350 hours into the game, which is more than I put into most any one game.
Yeah, you actually play Monster Hunter Rise more than I do.
I am. It's like my main stream game. My Twitch recap thing.
Mainstream, 2 words, not 1 word.
Yeah, main streaming game. Because back in last year, my Twitch recap said that last year I was in the top 9% in activity, like the amount of streaming of Monster Hunter Rise. I was in the top 9% of people who, in terms of amount of hours streamed of that game. I was in there. Ground floor. I was basically one of the people just at the front, just streaming the game more than anybody else. You know, more than 91% of Twitch streamers. Like, it's totally my jam, and I'm still playing it. I just recently beat Malzeno in the story of Sunbreak.
And there's still more. I'm almost in your position now, where I'm like, man, he's so far ahead. Am I gonna pick it back up?
Well, since it's co-op, though, we can one up. And it's different from, like, if there's a competitive game and someone gets too far ahead, then there's almost no point in playing against them.
Yeah, but in a competitive game, unless it's like upgrading your character kind of nonsense.
No, even a player skill. The best experience is when you have rivals that are
No. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, unless it's a game like Pokken Tournament, where the stats of your character matter as well. Like you can level up your own skill faster,
right?
Than in a game where it's like hard stats. Beat these missions, get to the same point in progression,
like traditional Pokemon.
In-game progression,
like traditional Pokemon trying to battle someone who's over. Even if you're doing the thing where it lowers Pokemon to level 50, if you're coming into that with Pokemon under 50, you're at an advantage.
But in a fighting game, you could even level up your skills by fighting against potentially by fighting against the other player who's so much further than you.
Yeah, although most people, if they're going against a person and there's just nothing but losing and getting crushed,
there's a certain level of you need to be close enough.
Yeah, but that's why I said though, if one person's way ahead, that's like way ahead.
Yeah. But in a game like Monster Hunter, it necessitates going through missions, which takes more time, getting certain equipment, getting to the point where while you're not like comparing one skills to another in a competition, it's still if you participate in missions that are too far ahead of your level, then you're not going to be doing that much, or worst case, you could be a drain on the team by carding too much.
Yeah. But like I said, I could use lower level armor and play missions with your missions.
I feel like especially when you're streaming, I don't want to come in and be like, oh, let's play these missions that you've already played through.
I did that with Sushi on stream. I don't mind.
Yeah, but like that's one of your viewers. It's a different thing. Like I'm not.
Yeah.
I
guess. Either way, I
an associate.
Well, all I know is I don't mind playing older missions with you. That's not an issue. So we can just do that sometime. But yeah.
I'll just have to get over my plot and play some more.
Yeah.
Surprise on it when it's so fun.
But yeah, regardless,
that's just me.
That's pretty much our discussion on tradition and evolution. There's a lot to unpack in it. We did unpack a lot. And there's, both have their places in gaming, because like a lot of indie games are retro styled, right? And they do well because of that, and then others are retro styled, but they introduce more modern elements into it, and they do well because of that. So it's not an all or nothing on either side kind of thing, it's finding the right things to evolve and the right things to adhere to tradition is pretty much what it comes down to. And it's up to each developer to try and find that balance. It's when they try to lean too hard into one or the other, staying too tightly to tradition, or changing everything too much, where problems arise.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And genre can make it lean one way a little bit more. Like non-fighting games are more prone to changing things up, helping.
Yeah. Pretty much.
I will say.
And with fighting games, it's a very difficult to find which things you need to evolve.
It's more of a delicate balance. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks everyone who listened up to this point. On YouTube, make sure you like if you agree with what we said, dislike if you disagree. Share with us in the comments any of your thoughts on what we've said or things we may not have thought of.
Yeah, tell us what your favorite game that had an evolution was. Maybe your least favorite game that had an evolution was.
Yeah, for me, I'll mention briefly, Dissidia NT was a game that they tried to evolve and it ruined it completely for me. And it failed horribly for it as well in terms of like the international market. It's just utter flop.
Yeah, I'll say one that's coming to my mind right now is Pokemon Sun and Moon, where they revamped instead of the gym leaders, you had the trials. So that was a really interesting and engaging experience for me. But
people loved it for that, but it also made it hard to replay. So there was pros and cons to that in and of itself.
If you're listening on a podcast platform, you could check out our YouTube, maybe comment there, or you could
leave a review, and say your thoughts in the review, or you could hit us up on Twitter with the hashtag CounterPick, one word, then _pod. CounterPick_pod is the hashtag for everything related to this podcast. And then
and what's your Twitter handle?
Oh yeah, at s_factor_sam. Same as the channel that you see down below. regardless of podcast platform, whatever. The name, it's consistent across all platforms.
Yeah. And mine is Psy Prime. Is my name in like title or the description anywhere? Whatever. It's XAI in the word
Description. Yeah, you're always in the description.
Yeah, Prime like Optimus. Yeah, how it is.
Yeah, I'll probably start putting you in the title too. Maybe I'll figure that out.
We'll figure that stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll make it easy to find us.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
I always love to hear some feedback. Talk it out.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
And then we'll see you next month. We'll have another discussion. Not sure what the
We won't
topic
see
is.
you, but you'll hear us.
Yeah. Not sure what the topic will be. It could be a number of things. It depends on what's really what hits at that time. So, all right. We'll see you next time. Or okay, fine. You just said the whole.
You'll hear us next time.
Yeah. All right. Outro.
You really did. Okay.
Have a good one, everyone. Sam and Cy Prime out.
Wait, we're still recording?
Yes.
Cut. Cut. Cut.